We have joining us today, we have Kevin Lonnie, President and CEO of KL Communications, and Alyssa Gresser, the Executive Vice President of Client Relations for KL Communications. Welcome, Kevin and Alyssa. Please begin.
Well, thank you, Brianna, for the introduction. This is obviously Kevin speaking. Alyssa and I are very happy to be part of today's webinar and share our thoughts on maximizing the value of your insights community. Now, we're gathering that the folks attending this webinar, this portion of the webinar, either have an online community or are considering one. So the great advantage of an online community is that it provides you with 24/7 access to your customers and or employees with all the research tools necessary to do great work. There's no need to scramble for a new sample, so in that way an online community is also extremely time efficient. Now, as for KL, we've been running online communities for over 20 years now, actually almost 25 years. We go back to the early days of the internet, or what we like to call the You've Got Mail era, for those of you who remember AOL or perhaps the Tom Hanks Meg Ryan movie. And over that period of time, like the Farmers Insurance ads, we've learned a thing or two. Yes, because we've seen a thing or two, but also because we've made our fair share of mistakes. That comes from pushing the envelope, but we've used those mistakes to keep learning and improving. And one thing we can say with certainty is that every online community is different because your needs, your customers are different. So what we've found is that some online communities are hit from the start, and others need to find their rhythm. So the purpose of our presentation today is to share 7 essential recommendations to make sure your community is a success right from the start with a clear return on investment. In other words, highly cost effective. And now to do the heavy lifting and to share those 7 recommendations, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Alyssa Gresser.
Thanks, Kevin. So recently, online communities have really grown in acceptance within companies. While overall budgets are usually being cut, the need for research has increased and the results are asked for even faster than ever. A community can really be an alternate, cost-effective way to conduct a lot of the research that you're normally doing on your ad hoc basis. So as Kevin mentioned, I'm going to take you through 7 tips on how to maximize your online community. So tip number 1, champion your community like an internal brand. When you first decide to commit to building an online community, you may get a lot of pushback because of the price, and that is 100% to be expected. What needs to really be done is you need to appoint an internal advocate for your community, and they need to treat it like their baby. Their job really is to shamelessly promote the community around the entire company. So first, it's important to come up with a name or a brand for your community, and from there on out, you always have to refer to your community by that name. One client we work with was able to form an acronym based off of their full community name, FAN, or the FAN as we like to call it. Internally now, they just say, hey guys, we need to run this project through the FAN. So a quick little aside is a colleague of mine and I were at a conference recently, and we met some folks from the company that we work with that we had never met before. And they came up to us and they were explaining what they do. And then we're like, oh yeah, we work with you guys. We run the FAN. And the look on their face was just like, oh my goodness, you guys run the FAN. So they really know the FAN, and it's not just considered an online community anymore. It really just has its own identity. So next, it really has to be promoted throughout the company. If no one knows a community exists or what can be done within the community, then there's really no point in investing in one. We have another client who really talks about the roadshow that she does. She goes around from department, probably on a quarterly basis, and really just talks about what the community can do, if there's any new enhancements, what types of projects they can do, but also sharing some low-hanging fruit results that have been done in the community so they can really see how it works for them as well. And finally, and probably the most important part here, is to prove the ROI of your community. Something that we like to do with our clients is at the end of the year, we add up all the projects they've done within the community and put a cost to them. And when we compare it to the overall cost of the initial build and running of an annual community, and we compare side by side all the ad hoc projects, if they did all the projects ad hoc versus how much they spent within the community. And you really be surprised, or maybe not, about how much money you're actually saving by running it through the community. Although the community, again, going back to my first point, seems like it's an overall large sum, at the end of the day, you're actually really saving money and you're really able to prove the value of your community. So tip number 2, maintain engagement via a constant flow. So an inside community requires a consistent rhythm. Members expect interaction and prefer when we can provide them with some type of set schedule. What we try and do is set a schedule for the members so they know when to expect those communications about any new activity. Now, we totally understand that sometimes the schedule has to change, whether there's an important project that comes up, maybe there's multiple things going out within a week. So we get that. But really what we try and do is keep a rhythm for the members. We've even had situations where members will email us or post within our community and asking where their activity is because they're used to always getting an activity at a certain time or day. So you may not always have what we call a research activity for your community members to do each week. So at this point, it's really important to not just contact them then, but to contact them whenever you can. So we call these activities engagement activities. And you should think of your engagement activities as more than just filler topics. They can still be strategic in nature and really designed to help you further understand more about your customers. Another form of engagement is what we like to call closing the loop. This is where you can share any results back with the members. Even if it's just a little nugget, sharing with your members shows them that you are listening and and in turn, it's keeping them engaged. We even see when we post some of these closing the loops, the members come back and comment to us, thank you so much for sharing, or it's great to see, my opinion counts, or how my opinion stacks up to other members of the community. So it actually, makes your community have, again, going back to that identity that I talked about before, they're really becoming and forming a relationship with the community. So they're giving you because you're giving back. And when you, we also have many clients who have 1 to 2 topics a month, but we still recommend reaching out once a week, at least to keep them engaged. So tip number 3, migrating your trackers into your community. So depending on the size of your community, there's an opportunity to bring in your expensive trackers into the community. This really only applies if you have thousands of members in your community. We know there are many communities out there that are much smaller in size. So for those types of communities, this tip does not apply. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking an online community is not the place to run your ongoing tracker. So I want to caution that it's important to the first time you do the wave is to also run the same one the way you were doing it before. That way you can look at the results side by side. You have to make sure that there's an acceptable margin of error for you to make sure that it's worth it. Because yes, saving money is great, but if you're not getting the results that make sense, then obviously it doesn't make sense to do that. We had a CPG client who was running a very expensive tracker outside of their community, and we said to them, why don't we see what happens if we run it within your community? And we did go ahead and do that, and for them, the results wound up being similar enough that they were able to fully move their tracker from outside into their community, and again, prove a very good cost savings for their company. One thing to consider too, depending on the size of your community, is if you have enough people, you don't have to send it out to all your members each wave. So depending on how many waves you're doing it. If you're doing it quarterly, maybe you're splitting up your community into 4s or 2s, so they're not getting every single wave. But again, it's very important to make sure that you run the first or second wave at the same time in your community and out of your community to make sure that your results are matching up. So tip number 4, seamlessly integrate third-party apps into your community platform. So this is more about when you're looking for a community partner or platform in the beginning, you want to make sure that the platform you choose is able to integrate other tools easily. So most community platforms today are built really with the same basic tools. They have forums, you have polls, you have survey integration, but some of the more advanced tools don't make sense to invest, for the community companies to invest in building. So why try and build something when there's already good tools out there that exist and are good? So it's really important, again, when you're looking for a community platform, to make sure that it's open, you can easily integrate, and the members won't even notice the difference because it's so easy to integrate. We do always tell our clients that if you ever see a methodology that we're currently not offering, or another partner or vendor comes in and says, hey, we want you to try this, first let's see if we can integrate it into our community. To share an example here, we had a client who was looking to do in-person usability research. When we were speaking with them about it, because they told us about it, we had said, you know what, we actually know of a tool that we can easily integrate for you here. The great part is you already have a recruited group of people. We know all their demographics, psychographics, things that we've asked them over time, so we can easily identify the people that you want to go to. It's all done online, so obviously it's quick. So we were able to integrate this app. We were able to see both the members' faces as well as their computers while they were doing the usability test. And the real win here was the client didn't have to travel. The research was much quicker because it was all online. And really, at the end of the day, it saved them a lot of money because, again, it was not in person. It was integrated right into something that they were already using. So that was an example of the member-facing integration, but we also are easily able to integrate back-end tools as well, like for sentiment analysis, video editing software. So again, any time that you think that something should be done outside the community, sometime you want to take a step back and just say, maybe it's possible that we can integrate it into our platform. Kevin, I think you had a few words you wanted to add about this as well.
Yes, thank you. And Alyssa, I'm glad you're doing the bulk of this, and I was on mute, so we didn't have to deal with my mother-in-law's 3 attempts to do a FaceTime interview with me at the same time. Such is life during the COVID period. But following up on Alyssa's points, we've heard frustrations from our clients in being able to stay on top of all the new tools that are becoming available. I mean, their day jobs don't allow for as much time as they would like to research and evaluate new offerings. So, of course, there's going to conferences, something we all hope we'll be doing again soon, which is, in theory, a great way to learn about new techniques, but that requires them to visit the exhibit hall and then do what they call run the gauntlet, which they are not very big fans of. So what we've done, following up on Alyssa's points, is we've introduced quarterly or at least twice a year in-person presentations where we share some of the newest tools that can be integrated into our platform. Alyssa already alluded to this. For example, we have 2 different companies that can do video editing, video clips. One is the industry standard, and they're more expensive. And another one we found has about 80% of the functionality for about 20% of the cost. So now it's up to the client, what works for you. We're simply acting as a broker and passing along the new tool cost. And that's working out extremely well. I mean, for us, it's just a matter of better integrating the community into the research ecosystem, something Alyssa will talk about more about. And so that's just another example of like maximizing the value of your online community, which is, in other words, just finding out all the tools that are out there, and if there's something that is of interest, more likely than not, they've already developed a third-party API where we can just, integrate it into our community. And, it's fine with us as long as it's a tool our clients like. We're quite happy to help, act as a way to bring it to market.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. And just to end on that part for this particular tip is a lot of times, too, we're finding that when we're able to work with these other partners, we can sometimes bring costs down as well because we're going to be offering it to a number of our clients. So it's not like you're just paying one subscription. So yes, while there is additional cost to integrate these third-party apps into our platform, a lot of times we're able to bring some costs down if we're working on a bigger picture, assuming that all of our or more than one client would be interested in that. So moving on to tip number 5, which is out of order. Did I skip one? I did. It's out of order. So moving on to, I'm going to jump ahead to tip number 6, and maybe we'll get back to tip number 5, is to integrate your community into your research ecosystem. So we know that you do not and will not put all your eggs into one research basket. And we agree with that. An online insight community is only one piece of the research puzzle for most companies. So what's important, though, is making sure that all the pieces are working together. We too often see separate departments try and do the same research using different approaches, and they're really then duplicating their efforts and wasting money. To tell a quick story, when we first went, it was about 2 years ago, we went into one client to pitch them for the first time, and we were talking about the tools that we could do with our community. And, we wound up winning this account, and then we found out a month later that the same time that we met with them, another department brought in another online community provider and hired them as well. So you had two different departments not working together, both hiring two different types of online community partners. One was full service or flex service, and one was do-it-yourself. So it just goes back to the communication and really how your online community plays into the overall space. So instead of thinking about your community as, think about your community being a complement to other research you do. So for example, within your community, maybe you're starting early on where you're gathering new customer ideas during an exploratory stage of a project, which will then go somewhere else after that. Maybe you're fleshing out deeper insights that came out of a project that you ran outside of the community that you still have more questions about. Maybe you want to develop concepts in your community or have already developed concepts that you want to test. So you have all different options of how your online community can play in terms of all the research that you're doing. And this goes back to the example I referenced earlier about the fan. This client may need to do research around a specific initiative, but the fan is always part of their overall process. Sometimes they come to us and say, we need to start very early on in the process. We want to get to our members very early on and get some, nuggets or what we call brainstorming ideas. And sometimes they come back to us and say, here are 10 to 20 concepts we developed internally. Let's run it through the fan and let's see how they stack up so we know which ones to focus on. We have another client who also has multiple research sources, including their online community, but they use all the different pieces to present one full cohesive story. We actually, once a year, all come together in person, all the different research partners, to present the learnings. So rather than competing with each other, we're actually working together, and because we all bring a different perspective and we all add to each other's research. And most of the time when we come out of these bigger meetings, there's even more research that needs to go back into the community because we have the questions of why, we need more answers. And again, your community is recruited already, they're ready for you, they're on, so it's really easy to put them back into the community. So let's see what tip is next. Utilize, here we go, this is where we go. So we flip my tips. So the next tip would be service should be flexible. When it comes to online communities, there really used to be two options. We had full service and do it yourself. Over the years, full service has also gotten the reputation of full price. So of course there are pros and cons for do it yourself and full service, but that conversation is for another presentation. The best value, however, in our opinion, is what we call flex service. And this allows you to really have the best of both worlds. Your community partners should have the ability to ramp up or ramp down depending on your needs at the time. Rather than having a set number of activities as you would with a full service partner, we implement more of a credit system. So based on the level of service needed for each activity, we'll determine how many credits are used. So an example here is we have a client that typically utilizes us for all aspects of a project, from the design to the programming, implementation, and through the final deliverable. But every now and then they may come to us and say either they have a little more bandwidth or they want to just bring something in-house on their own, and they can go ahead and do that. The credit system allows them to easily do that without feeling like they're losing out or paying for something that they're not getting. There's also times where, not every project requires this full-on deliverable. Maybe you just need a top-line summary. Or maybe for this one, you want extra tabs run and you really want a full persona look at a project. So the flex system with the credits allows you to really mix and match what you need and not have to be, tied into this full price, full service model. So rather than your community provider just being a vendor, this flex service option allows them to be an extension of your team if you need it and when you need it, and truly be your partner. And our final tip for today is utilize proactive research tools, co-creation really. So again, my final tip for you this afternoon is to think about your research community as proactive, not just reactive. We all know that survey response rates have been dropping over the years, and we have been using the same tools that are not necessarily reaching those younger generations. You need to make some of your research more interactive, where the participant feels that they're really part of the process. So we at KLC have a proprietary methodology we call crowd weaving. Here we really put our members in the driver's seat. We ask them to create an idea on their own. Then we ask them to work together as a group to make those ideas even better. And during this time, you as the client also have a part of working with the members on their ideas. So they're not just working with each other and co-creating, they're working with you as well. So you and the participant are mutually engaged, and you are showing the participant you're listening to them and you value what you have to say. So to share a brief example, we had a client who was looking to create a new program for their newest customers. We reached out to all of the customers and had them think back to when they were new and what they really needed at that time. We laid out some parameters for them. You know, you can lay out as many rules as you want, but you kind of want them to freely think about their ideas. So once the members spend some time on their own ideating their ideas, we ask them to collaborate with each other. We want them to add comments to each other's ideas. We want them to challenge each other to expand on their ideas. And we really want them to work together to make each idea even better. And at this point, we also involve the client where they can challenge and ask questions themselves. So they're really honing in on certain aspects of people's ideas that they want them to flesh out on. Finally, we move to this evaluation stage where we're really able to hone down on the top ideas. Here, there's some voting and there's some ranking to really see which ideas are rising to the top. And at the end of this, the client was able to come out of this project with an overarching themes and pain points for the members, which then help them develop a new program for their newest members. And then what they could do is after this part, whether they choose to do some more quantitative testing, some more in-depth, they can go back into the community and even dig a little deeper. So what I really want you to take away here is that when you embark in co-creation, it's most important to involve your members very early on in the process. You'll be surprised how engaged they are in your research when you involve them in that early on phase. So I'll just end by saying whether you already have an online community or you're considering one, you'll want to maximize the benefits of your investment and really prove the worth of your community like a champion. So today's tips are based off of a full ebook that we actually have put together. So if you'd like a copy of the full ebook, you can just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to share it with you. Before we go into questions, Kevin, did you have some closing comments?
Alyssa, I think you pretty much captured it. Just a couple of quick points. Think through the value proposition for your community. It is going to be an internal brand, so it's almost like a brand positioning paper. Why are you doing this? What is it going to be used for? And another thing we recommend, and we do this in terms of our weekly calls, is we think through what the research is that's going to go through the community. We call it the opportunity calendar. And the final recommendation with that is don't let it get too tactical. It's easy to fall into that because of the fact it's just so easy to use your community to handle fires as they come up. But it's hard to show a great ROI if you're not doing anything strategic with it. So again, every community is different. It's like a pH balance. You want to just make sure that you're maximizing it. So think it through. And then if you're not sure if you want to commit to an ongoing community, other firms offer this too. You can start out with, we call it a pulse community, but it's a short-term community. You can use that as sort of a value proposition, see if that's working for you, and then you can always extend it further from there. So with that, we can go to questions.
Great. Thank you both. We've got a few questions in the queue already. Kevin, I think this first one is probably for you. How much does it cost to build and run a community? And then after the community is built, what are the average maintenance costs to support the community?
Okay,
Tricky
well, I'm
one.
going to try and, yes, it is. And I'm going to try to answer this as accurately as possible. How much does it cost? I'm not dodging this in any way, shape, or form. It really depends. Again, Alyssa referred to the fact that, we have the flex service. And also it depends on the frequency of the projects that go through the community. We have some clients that are doing 2 communities a week, so it's up to 8 to 10 a month. And then we have others who are only doing 1 or 2 a month. So for that reason, because of the variability or the flexibility, both in terms of service and the amount of actual research projects, our communities right now vary in cost anywhere from like $125,000 a year to over $300,000 a year. So again, that depends on how much you're using it for and the level of service support. And then as far as the average maintenance cost, those tend to be, we do have some fixed costs, which is just simply using the platform. Those tend to run about $4,000 a month to get you started. So the cost of entry, starts at about $125,000 a year. Again, typically, this is the way our business model works. It's a kind of an ongoing gig. So we look at it in terms of a year. We figure out your needs up front. We give you the amount of credits we think you're going to need. Halfway through the year, we kind of figure out, well, are we going to exceed that or not? And then we can either get more credits or put some research into next year. So the prices do vary, again, depending on the level of service and the frequency of the actual number of projects going through your community.
Okay, great. We have just a few more minutes here, guys. Let's see. Next question that we have. This is one I think is a very good one. What divisions, departments, and/or job titles would you recommend involving in the community process early so they might be able to help you champion the community internally?
You want to take that, Alyssa?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sure. That's a great question. I really think that it needs to start from the top. You need to have anyone who is involved in making any research decisions has to know about the community. If you're not going to get buy-in from the top, then it's not going to make a difference who's into it. So I would say anyone with marketing, market research, insights, innovation, those types of groups seem to use it a lot. And anyone who really has a voice within the company, especially the higher up, the better, because I think it all starts from the top down. So if you're going to get your most senior people to buy into it, then people below and below and below are going to be more likely to use it.
Great. Excellent. Okay. We have time for 1 or 2 more. Can you please talk a little about an employee community? This is kind of a general thing, so I'm not sure if maybe you can put a little bit more specifics into it.
Well, we do run some employee communities now, so I can speak to that briefly. Employee communities are very similar, obviously, in nature as a customer community, but the employees, sometimes it's a little more sensitive, especially this time with what we're all going through right now. We've been using a lot of the employee communities to get a pulse on people working from home. How do they feel about working from home? How do they feel about their job security? How do they feel about communication? But even during not this time, the employee communities, you can cover anything from, customer, employee news, newsletters, intranet. You can cover things like training. Employee training is a really big one. We've done a lot, the types of training they need, and really understand, how the employees and even bring in the customers with them, how they see things the same or differently.
Yeah, and a follow-up on Alyssa's point there, too. I'd say for about a quarter of our communities, we're running a customer and an employee community. It's kind of rare to run an employee community without a customer community, but if you're doing the both, again, you're getting more of a full spectrum, which is particularly great if you're doing any kind of like sort of customer co-creation work where you're getting both input from customers and employees.
Great. And let's take one final question, but let's try to keep it to a 30 to 45-second response. Is it easier to build and maintain a B2C or a B2B community?
Well, that's going to be hard to talk about in 30 seconds, but I'll do it. So it really depends. I think B2C is easier to recruit, in my opinion. Whether your clients have already customer lists that you can use or you're using partners to recruit. The B2B is definitely harder to recruit, depending on what type of business it is. In terms of engagement, B2C, you're probably engaging more often than the B2B because you don't want to reach out to the B2B as often. But sometimes you see on the B2B side that you are offering a little bit of a better incentive, so you may have a little higher participation. So I think it depends, and I'm happy to talk about this more, but it's definitely more than a 30 to 40-second conversation.
Definitely. Kevin, final thought?
I think Alyssa did a great job. A very succinct way of discussing B2B versus B2C. It depends.
Yep. Awesome. Great. Thank you both very much for the presentation and the Q&A session. I think that about does it today for us. I'd like to also thank all of our wonderful speakers, Pam, Beatrice, Mike, and Kevin and Alyssa, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. We will be sending you a link to the recording session very soon. If you'd like to register for more sessions of the TMRE Digital Week, please visit our registration page located in the resource area. If you'd like more content like this, don't miss TMRE 2020, taking place October 5th through the 7th in San Antonio. As a special thank you to our valued TMRE Digital Week attendees, we are offering you an exclusive $100 off your ticket when you use the code TMRE20DW. For more information about the event to register, please visit themarketresearchevent.com. Thanks very much for joining us today, and have a great day.